Welcome into Palmetto Sports Daily on this fine Monday, everybody. Caroline here alongside Julia, Teagan, and Kevin. Guys, opening weekend on the diamond for college baseball. Could not have asked for some better weather for the first part of the weekend in the upstate here, at least 60 degrees, sunny, just screaming baseball all around. Clemson baseball also really excited about opening weekend. They opened things up with a sweep 3-0 over Army West Point. Aside from the play on the field, just a really cool weekend all around. It was their Heroes weekend. Both of these schools, Army obviously, but Clemson too, have a very deep-rooted military history, and Clemson was paying some homage to Army as well and veterans, something that this program does really well and has done for the entire tenure of Eric Bakich's time being there. They had some really nice military appreciation moments, like gifting Army with some gifts, and also Army joined in on Clemson's tradition of shaking veterans' hands during the fourth inning, so that was pretty cool as well. I think people in the crowd also really enjoyed it. But back to the gameplay, Clemson gets a 3-2 win on Friday, a little comeback action. Then they get a 10-1 win on Saturday. The games on Saturday turned into a doubleheader because the weather ended up getting worse on Sunday. So game one is a 10-0 win. Game two is a 7-0 win. That's Clemson's first back-to-back shutout since 2020, and it's their first scoreless doubleheader since 2001. So that's pretty rare. Head coach Eric Bakich was really impressed and excited about the performance of his pitching staff for opening weekend.
Testament to our pitching staff. Pitched just an awesome weekend. It's hard to sweep a doubleheader, sweep a team, but to get back-to-back shutouts in a doubleheader. The legendary Brian Hennessy, #1 ranked SID in the country, said it hasn't happened since 2001. So just to show you how rare it is, especially against a good team, a regional team. They'll be in the postseason again this year. I know it. That's a tough group of kids, well coached, very fundamentally sound, and play hard. And so to get that type of pitching performance all weekend, but today especially with putting zeros up, was huge.
So it was 6 scoreless innings for starting pitcher Michael Sharman in that first game on Saturday. Then in a bullpen game, a handful of guys combined for the shutout. The second game of that doubleheader on Saturday afternoon as well. Clemson back in action tomorrow, hosting Charlotte. But Teagan, Tigers not the only team to get a shutout this weekend, right?
No, the Shawns had a very good weekend at home, opening the year against Fairfield. 3 wins. They had to play a doubleheader on Saturday because of the incoming weather on Sunday, but it worked out in their favor. Looking at day 2 of the weekend, Coastal came out on top in that first game, 5-1. They struck early. They never trailed after that. Of course, they had a big crowd all weekend long, including a record-breaking opening day crowd. Of course, Cam Fluke pitched that first game, the preseason pitcher of the year for the Sun Belt for D1 baseball, a couple of other outlets as well. Blagan Pato was a big weapon for Coastal this weekend, putting the Shawns on the board with a 2-run home run to left field, and then later in the inning, Dean Mijos connected on a 2-run homer in that first game of day 2. So the Shawns with a very exciting opening weekend, and actually, Kevin, they face the College of Charleston next. That's going to be tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So Coastal looking to continue this year off on the right foot. They're 6th ranked in that D1 baseball poll. So really high expectations for them this weekend. How about the Gamecocks, Julia?
Well, not a perfect weekend for South Carolina. They go 2-1 to start the season. And, there's been a lot of questions around this program coming into this year. Obviously, year 1 under Paul Maneri was not what anybody wanted it to be. They lost almost 30 games last season. So you go into this season a little bit hesitant, wondering what they've been able to string together. And, day 1, they had to play a doubleheader on Friday as well, and they got 2 wins, 5-2 in game 1, 6-5 in game 2. They got a nice walk-off home run to win that one. So you're off to a good start there, but then Saturday, they just couldn't get anything going. It was a 3-2 loss. That's their first loss of the season. The offense just kind of struggling all weekend long across the board. They batted .255 on the weekend, 24 hits and 94 at-bats. But one of the big things that, we talked about a lot last season, runners in scoring position. 4 of 30 for the weekend, 0 of 7 on Saturday. So, of course, one of the biggest problems from 2025, already an issue in 2026. And to add on top of that, Coach Maneri said the guys were just tired on Saturday.
Well, it wasn't really today, David, just with runners in scoring position. We just didn't swing the bats good at all today. It's just, it's hard to understand, really. I expected a lot more. I told you yesterday I thought we'd come out and really explode today. I knew the guys were tired from yesterday. It was a long day, 18 innings. It was, we had a lot of guys whose legs were cramping and so forth. So we decided not even to take batting practice on the field and just do it exclusively in the batting cages to try to let their bodies heal a little bit. But obviously, I didn't have them ready to play today.
So for as much as they've kind of teased this explosive offense that South Carolina is supposed to have this season, can't say we've really seen that in the first 3 games. Kevin, just how we feeling about this?
It just seems like Paul Maneri says things every now and then that just blow me away. Like, how do you say that on the second day of the season that the guys are tired? These are 18 to 22-year-old baseball players. These are athletes. They should be the cream of the crop. And they're tired after playing 2 games in a day. These kids, and when they're 15 and they're in travel ball, they play 3 games a day for the course of 3 days. When they go away on these trips, there is no reason. Even if they are tired, why would you come out and say that? He did the same thing last year where he said something along the lines of he wasn't prepared for what this season was going to bring. Like, even if that's true, why do you say it? And I don't understand why Maneri keeps doing this to himself. I don't know if the school has to step in and be like, hey, maybe just stick to some basic answers or something along the lines, because he just opens himself up for this criticism. If they had lost that game on Saturday and he just came out and just said, yeah, we didn't swing the bats well today, nobody would have said a word and it would have gone past and it would have just shrugged their shoulders like, all right, 1 bad game, no big deal. But to come out and say they're tired after 2 games, what are we doing here, Julia?
Not really sure, but I guess we'll find out as we get further into the season. I mean, obviously a very early sample size, but a lot of games still to be played and plenty of games that happened this past weekend down in Low Country, Kevin.
Yeah, all 3 teams had their opening weekend, including the College of Charleston, who opened up with 4 games against a Big Ten team in Rutgers. And things started off well on Friday night for the College of Charleston as their bats came out really swinging pretty well and opened up the season with an 8-3 win. They scored about 5 runs over the course of the first 2 innings. So they just kind of patted on from there, and they started off the season 1-0 with that win over Rutgers. From there, though, things really went downhill and quickly. They had a doubleheader on Saturday. They lost both games by the scores of 13-2 and then 5-2, and then they come out yesterday and they get run ruled in 8 innings by Rutgers, losing that one 14-4. So after a good start Friday, really not the way Chad Holbrook wanted things to go on Saturday and Sunday. Like Teagan mentioned, they'll try to bounce back tomorrow night when they go up to Coastal Carolina for a road game in that one. Meanwhile, Charleston Southern actually started off the weekend with a 3-game sweep over Bucknell. Buck's looking really good, and this is the first time they've opened the season with a 3-game sweep since back in since back in 2015. So it's been more than a decade since CSU has done this. So off to a great start. They win Friday night 6-3. They run rule Bucknell on Saturday in the first game of a doubleheader 11-1, and then win 8-5 in the second game. So their best start in more than a decade. As for the Citadel, they were back at home opening up the season against Liberty this weekend. They got off to a rough start on Friday as they dropped game 1 of that 3-game set 7-3 against the Flames. They came back, got their first win of the season on Friday, looking good in a 4-3 victory, and then came up short on Sunday in a 5-4 loss. They had the tying run on in that bottom of the 9th inning, but just couldn't bring it through. They're going to be back in action this coming weekend when they play host to Marshall. We've got more coming up here on Palmetto Sports Daily, coming up after the break.
Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. Congratulations are in order for head coach Dawn Staley, who notched her 500th career win at South Carolina on Saturday at LSU. The Gamecocks took down the Tigers 79-72 in quite the nail-biter for this matchup. I mean, this is the 18th straight win over LSU now. But this is always a really highly contested rivalry, and it's obviously a game that LSU always wants to win, has not been successful at winning. But once again, you see the fight that this South Carolina team has when they don't have all of their players available. They were down Adele and Maddie. They once again had to kind of reconfigure how they were going to play this game, but they found a way to win, and really impressive performances from Tessa Johnson and Raven Johnson. Tessa had 21 points, Raven 19 points. Kind of want to just give her whole stat line: 19 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals in 36 minutes. So obviously those guards having to play a lot because they were down Maddie, but once again found a way, and now they stand really alone at the top of the standings. They're 25-2, 11-1 in the SEC. They have a game-and-a-half lead over the next team in the standings. That is, of course, Vanderbilt, but South Carolina has wins over Vandy, Texas, Tennessee, and now LSU. So just really impressive, and that's the kind of thing you want to see from them as we're getting into the back half of February and trending toward March. But here's what Don had to say about the Johnsons and their performance.
They're built for it, and maybe if they could have gotten a couple of other blows throughout the second half, they might have had enough energy to make some more plays down the stretch. But they were exhausted, but they got us over the mountaintop.
Over the mountaintop, and of course they're just proving time and time again that they will win with whoever they have on the floor. So guys, just want to ask you about this. Obviously a really impressive accomplishment for Dawn Staley, but how does this really cater towards what South Carolina can do as we trend toward March Madness, Kevin?
Well, it shows that they're an elite team, and we've known that all along, and they should be one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country as we hit into the tournament. The thing I was really impressed at is I can't think of a rivalry where both teams are elite, and despite another win over LSU, this is a top 6 or 7 team in the country. But to have won 18 in a row, like you said, I can't think of a rivalry where both teams are this good, that one team has just dominated it so consistently for the better part of a decade now, almost a full decade that they haven't lost to LSU. So that's really impressive. The thing that's going to stick out to me about this game is all the memes we've got from Kim Mulkey just screaming and yelling on the side of the court, especially the one during the timeout where she's screaming and yelling, who's going to guard Tessa? Who can guard Tessa? Nobody can guard Tessa on this night, Caroline.
Yeah, nobody could guard Tessa. I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from this game. She was just electrifying from three-point land out there. But I just think it's so funny on the rivalry note I know it's a rivalry. I know it's spirited. Obviously, there's a lot of energy behind the meeting between these two, right? But it's just funny to call it a rival when South Carolina's won 18 of their last meetings. I mean, that is an insane stat. It's not like they've won 3 of the last 18. They've won 18 in a row. So definitely a lot of energy. You could feel it on the broadcast just watching it going through. I was having such a good time cutting my highlights from this game. I was like, can I just run the whole game in my sportscast on Sunday? So that was it was definitely fun to watch. So good one there. Another good one in Syracuse between Clemson women's hoops and Syracuse. The Tigers, though, end up falling in a nail-biter 68-64. Syracuse is a good basketball team. They're up towards the top of the ACC and one of those top 3 spots for women's hoops right now. Mia Moore for Clemson was coming off back-to-back games with a career high in points. She put up 30 and then 31, broke her own career high. She finished with 17, so did Taylor Johnson-Matthews. Just a lot of effort there, but it came down to the final 13 seconds. Tamira Hines was trying to go for a layup, hit the rim, didn't go in. That was a chance to tie it up, and then Syracuse ended up icing things with free throws, making it a 4-point game in the final few seconds there. But head coach Sean Poppy after the game just talked about that being one of the biggest things in this win, just not being able to hit simple shots like that, and also Clemson's inability to box out being 2 big takeaways from the reasons that they lost this game, also getting beat on the offensive boards as well. So that loss will drop Clemson to 9-6 in ACC play. But as we know by Clemson standards, 9 conference wins, that's a big deal. They haven't had more than 8 in a season since the 2018-2019 season, but they're going to need a push here towards the end of February to get where they want to be, and that is having a bid to the NCAA tournament. Only 3 more games on the schedule, starting with number 11 Duke. That game's coming up on Sunday. But Teagan, We got more hoops. Tell us about it.
Oh, yeah, we definitely do. Coastal Carolina facing the best team in the Sun Belt over the weekend, Georgia Southern. And for the first half of it, it really looked like Coastal was able to keep up. They outscored the Eagles 18-17 in that first quarter, and then they were only down by 1 at halftime. But then something that's happened a few times this season, Sean's come out of the locker room and just really struggle in that third quarter. They were outscored 20-9 in that third quarter, and after that, there was really no coming back for Coastal. They just struggled to get a hold of their offense throughout that. Tessa Grady, though, leading the team in points. She had 14. Kristen Williams, one of the three-point shooter leaders in the country, she was right behind her with 12. So Coastal still struggling in conference play. They're going to look to bounce back when they face App State, and it's an early tip-off for this one. They're playing App State at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. So hopefully they can wake up, have some energy, not have that third quarter down that they've had a couple of times this year. So tip-off for that one, again, 11 a.m. We have more coming up on Palmetto Sports Daily, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. We got more basketball to talk about, of course, because it is Men's February. But today, earlier this afternoon, we get word that Clemson men's basketball has dropped out of the AP Top 25. The Tigers were sitting at number 20 coming into the week, but back-to-back losses, a 10-point loss at home to Virginia Tech earlier in the week, and then a 13-point loss on the road at Duke ends up pushing the Tigers all the way out. They did get the most votes out of any team not in the top 25 with 55, so they're kind of at that unofficial 26 mark, but nevertheless still out of the top 25. Losing back-to-back games, something the Tigers have not done since early December when they lost to Alabama and BYU. But the theme in both of the games this time around was their inability to make shots, and that's really something that this team has been doing very well, especially from behind the arc. They shot just 45% from the floor, 31% from three against Virginia Tech, and then just 35% from the floor, 25% from three against Duke. You saw that video there of all the stars. Cooper Flagg was in the building. Coach Mike Krzyzewski there as well at Cameron Indoor. Tough environment to play in, as we know as fans, but still Brad Brownell not content with his team's performance on Saturday.
Can't score. I mean, it's pretty simple. You can't score. You're not going to hold Duke. I mean, to hold them to 67, I probably would have taken that if you told me that at the beginning of the game. It's just, you can't keep up. And obviously we're not as gifted offensively. This is where not having a guy that can just kind of save you at times, go make a great one-on-one play on a consistent basis, or, do enough to draw another player and help, probably hurts us. There's just so much on our execution and then shot making, and we haven't shot the ball as well here this week.
So that loss will snap Clemson's 14-game conference road streak, the longest of that kind in the country. And I know Brad Brownell said that this wasn't the case, but Clemson last week went over, played two very late games in California against Stanford and Cal. Kevin, before we get to those low country games, just want to ask you, do you think there was any kind of a hangover maybe from that California road trip?
Well, it's hard to argue that there wasn't, because they lost both games. I had said last week I was more worried about that first game of the week, the Virginia Tech game, being more of a trap game going into the Duke game, and it turned out that was true also, and then they just don't perform well against Duke. I think once they get to the Duke game, the fact that they were on national TV and a game that pretty much the whole country was watching at that time, an early tip-off on Saturday, and everyone paying attention, and it had been a week since they got back from the West Coast at that point, that those cobwebs should have been shaken off by then. So I don't want to blame the West Coast trip on that, but I mean, we're going to see if they bounce back this week, and if it's a curse of a West Coast trip that the Tigers are on going forward here in the middle of February. As for here in the Low Country, we had all three teams in action over the course of this weekend, including the College of Charleston on Sunday. They were on the road facing off against Campbell. A week that started with CFC in first place in the CAA Conference now sees them 2 games back of first place UNC Wilmington after losing to the Seahawks at home last Monday and then falling at home again on Thursday when they lost to Hofstra. but they bounced back a little bit, coming up with a win at Campbell yesterday. This is that game from Thursday night when they lost against Hofstra. One big important note for CFC, that was Connor Hickman you saw on the bench. He actually lost his court case against the NCAA, had a temporary injunction that was filed during the course of the early part of this season that was allowing him to play. That injunction was called off last week, so now he is ineligible to play for the remainder of this season. They're going to go back to court hopefully at some point this week and see if they can get a reconsideration on that, but it's not looking good that Hickman's going to be playing for CFC again this season. As for Charleston Southern, they were suffering a loss on the road at Radford on Saturday. The Bucks had just broken an 8-game losing streak with a win at home on Thursday. They've now lost 9 of their last 10. And the Citadel, after they've been playing pretty well this weekend, or the past week before this, the Cid at home on Saturday, they fall to Mercer. A tough one against the Bears as they lose that one 70-54. We're going to be right back to wrap up this edition of Palmetto Sports Daily right after this.
Rounding out this episode of Palmetto Sports Daily with a quick football note. So anybody knows Luke Doty, he's been around this Gamecock program for a very long time. He's finally not playing anymore, but now he's going to be a part of the staff, and not even just Beamer staff in general, but he's going to be on the defensive staff, which is quite interesting when you think about the fact that he played quarterback for several years. He also lined up as wide receiver. So going to be interesting. We'll have to talk about this in the future, guys, about what this could mean for this program and what he can do for the defense. But for now, that's just a little taste, and we'll talk about it more this week. But for now, that is it for us. Have a great week.